What if Dooku told Anakin that Palpatine was the Sith? Part 1. Our story begins aboard the Invisible Hand, where Anakin stood over the defeated Sith Lord. His breath heavy, heart pounding. He had done the impossible. He had bested one of the greatest duelists in the galaxy. Dooku lay before him, weakened, beaten, and at his mercy. Two lightsabers, his own and Dooku's, hummed menacingly. Their twin blades crossed at the old man's throat. Dooku's eyes locked onto Anakin's, but there was no defiance left in him, only fear, confusion, and a silent plea. But before Anakin could make his next move, a voice sliced the air like a blade. "Good, Anakin, good." Chancellor Palpatine's voice slittered through the air, smooth and deliberate. Anakin barely had time to process before Palpatine gave the order. His voice, a whisper of a command. "Kill him." Dooku's eyes shot to his master, and in that moment, everything became horrifyingly clear. It all clicked. The lies, the deception, the betrayal. Palpatine never intended to reform the Republic. He never wanted peace. He only ever sought power. He only ever wanted control. Dooku's stomach twisted with a sickening realization. He had been a pawn all along. He had abandoned the Jedi, forsaken his own beliefs, all for the empty promise of a better galaxy. A lie, a cruel, insidious lie. And now, standing above him, blade in hand, was the proof of his replacement. Skywalker. Sidious had been grooming him from the start. The plan had never been about Dooku. It had always been about Anakin, the apprentice he truly wanted. No, this couldn't be. Dooku refused to die as a pawn. With the last of his strength, he sucked in a sharp breath and shouted, "Wait, Palpatine is the Sith Lord." Time seemed to stop. Anakin's eyes widened, his grip tightening around the hilt of the sabers. Slowly, his gaze flicked from Dooku to Palpatine, searching, questioning, doubting. Palpatine's expression twisted into something dark. His lips curled back, his mind reeling. "What did you just say?" Palpatine's voice was smooth, practiced, but dripping with deception. "Lies, Anakin. He is desperate. You cannot trust him." But Dooku wasn't yet finished. His voice, though weak, carried a weight of an undeniable truth. "No, Skywalker. I know everything. The war, the Sith, from the very beginning, Palpatine was behind it all. He is Darth Sidious, the true mastermind of the war." Anakin shook his head. No, that couldn't be true. Palpatine had always been there for him, through everything. When the Jedi doubted him, when they cast him aside, Palpatine had been the one to believe in him, to guide him. He couldn't be a Sith. Dooku's voice cut through the storm of Anakin's thoughts like a blade. "I can prove it." Anakin's hand shot out. The Force surged around Dooku's throat, pulling him into the air. "Then prove it." Dooku gasped, eyes darting between Anakin and Palpatine. He had seconds left, but he would not go down alone. Order 66. The inhibitor chips. It is all part of his grand plan. He never wanted peace. He wanted the galaxy to its knees. Anakin's breath hitched. His hands trembled. His mind screaming at him to reject it. But deep down, he knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. And Palpatine knew it too. The Sith Lord's face darkened, his golden eyes gleaming with something primal, dangerous. Dooku had exposed him. Now there was only one move left to play. Would Anakin see the truth before it was too late? Anakin's mind raced. Tup, Fives, the conspiracy, the order they spoke of. This was it. He hadn't understood it then, but now it all made horrifying sense. His grip on Dooku loosened as he lowered the Sith Lord to the ground, his breath quickening. He turned to face Palpatine, but never got the chance. A sudden, monstrous wave of force sent him hurling backwards. The impact crushed the air from his lungs as he slammed into the durasteel walls, caving them inwards, crumbling beside Obi-Wan's unconscious body. Pain shot up through his body, his vision swimming. Then he heard it. A groan, movement. Obi-Wan stirred, but before Anakin could warn him of what was happening, it hit him. Pure agony. Lightning surged through his veins, searing his flesh. His body convulsed violently as Palpatine, no, Sidious, unleashed his full, merciless power of the dark side. Anakin's screams echoed throughout the chambers, his vision flickering between blinding white and suffocating black. His strength was draining, his mind unraveling. He spit out blood as he boiled from the inside. Then a sudden break in the pain. Gasping for air, Anakin collapsed to the ground just in time to see Obi-Wan, battered but alive, standing next to Anakin as he ran over to Sidious. The Jedi Master's fist connected with the Sith Lord's jaw, snapping his head sideways. For a split second, there was silence. Then, a twisted snarl of rage. Sidious barely flinched before turning his wrath upon Kenobi. The lightning came again, worse this time. Obi-Wan dropped to his knees, his entire body convulsing as arcs of unnatural blue and purple fire coursed through him. His muscles locked, his eyes wide with suffering. Sidious didn't stop. His face contorted into something inhuman, reveling in the torment. Anakin forced himself up, lips trembling. "No," he yelled. Obi-Wan's gaze found him. Desperate and pained, he screamed at Anakin to run. The word tore from his throat, but it was cut short. Blood oozed from his eyes and ears as Sidious clenched his fingers into a fist, lifting the immobilized Jedi into the air and twisted him. A sickening crack filled the atmosphere. Obi-Wan's body jerked violently and unnaturally before collapsing to the ground with a hollow thud. His head lolled to the side, lifeless, his eyes still wide with horror, stared at Anakin blankly. Anakin's breath disappeared. No, 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 no! His world tilted, his vision blurred, his legs felt heavy, disconnected from reality. Obi-Wan, his friend, his brother, was slain by that monster, that demon. Sidious barely spared the corpse a glance. Turning back, he expected to find Anakin where he had left him, but he was gone. A deep, girdle rage consumed the Sith Lord. His lips curled, and then he screamed. The voice that tore from Sidious's throat was unnatural, a bone-chilling wail that shook the very structure of the ship. The metal walls groaned, the air itself trembled. Dooku, still slumped on the floor, felt his skull nearly split open from the sheer force of the Sith scream. But before he could react, Sidious lashed out once more, slamming him into the Durasteel bulkhead with a brutal crunch. Dooku barely clung on to consciousness, his body broken, his vision darkening. Through the haze, he saw his master withdraw a comlink. Sidious's voice was calm, too calm. "The time has come." A pause. "Execute Order 66. Those words, the last words Dooku would hear before he passed out. Anakin ran as fast as he could. His lungs burned, his legs moved on instinct, pounding against the cold steel of the ship's corridors. He could still see Obi-Wan falling. He could still hear Palpatine's voice mocking him as he ran. His heart hammered like a war drum in his chest, and he forced himself forward until he turned a corner. A squad of battle droids rounded ahead. Their photoreceptors flashed. "Open fire," they ordered. Blaster bolts filled the hallways in a torrent of red. Anakin barely had time to react. Pain erupted in his gut as one of the shots found its mark, sending him staggering backwards. Gritting his teeth, he yanked his lightsaber free, its blue glow carving through the ongoing barrage. He lunged, slashing through the droids with reckless desperation, barely escaping down another corridor. He fumbled for his comms, breath ragged. "R2, get the ship ready. We're leaving now." The doors to the hangar bay slammed open. Anakin stumbled forward, vision blurring. The ship was right there. Freedom, escape, survival. He reached the cockpit ladder when a low, mechanical growl was heard. Anakin's blood turned to ice. Behind him, the unmistakable hiss of 4 lightsaber ignitions filled the air. He turned slowly. General Grievous stood at the entrance, illuminated by the eerie glow of his weapons. Behind him, a wall of thousands of battle droids stood at the ready, their blasters aimed and waiting. Grievous grinned. "Anakin Skywalker, such a renowned hero, you seem scared." The general laughed. "Kill him." The hangar erupted in a storm of blaster fire. Anakin's instincts took over. His lightsaber spun in a frenzied blur, deflecting bolt after bolt, but there were too many, too fast. His mind reeled, his strength wavered. He was already injured. A shot tore through his shoulder. He staggered back, his weapon nearly slipping from his grasp. His breath grew ragged, his vision darkened. Grievous held his fist up, and simultaneously all fire stopped. Looking at Anakin, he advanced, slow and methodical. The tips of each lightsaber dragged against the durasteel floor, leaving glowing scars in the wake. Sparks crackled in the dim light as his towering frame loomed over Anakin. The droid general chuckled, a deep, gravelly mockery of laughter. "Ah, the great Skywalker." His glowing eyes burned with predatory delight. "Not so great now, are you?" Anakin gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on his saber. He wasn't going to go down without a fight. But he was suddenly thrown back as R2 piloted the Jedi starfighter into the horde of droids, beeping to Anakin to escape, which would be the last thing he ever did, as the ship alongside R2 was soon destroyed as Grievous recovered and tore it to shreds with his bare hands, tearing the head off the R2 unit. Grievous snarled, his glowing eyes narrowing as he watched the Jedi starfighters tear through the chaos of the battle, vanishing into the void. Skywalker was escaping. Unacceptable. His claws scraped against the floor as he barked into his comms. "All firepower. Focus on that starship. Bring it down." The invisible hand released hell. Turbo lasers filled the skies, streaks of crimson cutting through the blackness of space, each one narrowly missing its target. Inside the cockpit, Anakin's grip tightened on the controls, his knuckles white. This wasn't his starfighter, it was Obi-Wan's. He twisted, spun, and dove, weaving through the firestorm of destruction. Everywhere around him was death. Venator-class cruisers erupted in fiery infernos. Escape pods were incinerated before they could reach safety. Bodies, Jedi, clone, droids, drifted lifelessly through the battlefield. He wanted to turn back. He wanted to fight. He wanted to save Obi-Wan, save R2, but he couldn't. The weight of it all crushed him. Obi-Wan was gone. His master, his brother, was dead. And now R2, left behind on a ship ruled by a monster. Anakin's scream tore through the cockpit, a raw cry of anguish. But there was no time to grieve. The invisible hand's cannons locked onto him. A deafening blast rocked his ship, sending it into a violent spiral. Alarms blared, his rear thruster engulfed in flames. Thick black smoke billowed into space as he struggled to regain control. He slammed the comm switch. "Temple, come in. This is Anakin Skywalker, the Chancellor. He's..." Static. Nothing. The transmissions were all jammed. He was alone. The ship lurched forward, a direct hit. Yet this hit was different. It wasn't from a droid. It was from one of his own men. The clones. Confused, Anakin tried to reach their comm station, but there was only one order being issued. Order 66. So Tup was right. Fives was right. He had been so blind. Now he must pay the price. Sparks erupted from the console as warning lights flashed blood red. His damaged thruster failed completely, and the starfighter lurched violently forward. Anakin dove of a ruined Venator cruiser, barely squeezing through its shattered hull. The husk of the once mighty battleship proved only seconds of cover before another barrage of laser fire tore through the debris, turning it into a death trap. He had to get to the surface. Yanking the controls, he forced the ship into a reckless descent. Engines sputtering, the planet loomed ahead, a vast wasteland of fire and ruin. If he could just make it there, he would be safe. But his thoughts were cut off. A shriek of hundreds, a shadow, a flash of red light. His heart stopped. Hundreds of vulture droids. They all opened fire. The blast ripped through his second engine. Anakin's ship spiraled out of control. The world spun violently. The sky, the ground became a blur as gravity took hold, dragging him down. The cockpit shuddered violently, alarms screeching into his ear. He was going down, fast. Gritting his teeth, he braced for impact as the surface of the planet rushed to meet him. Mace Windu and Yoda stood motionless at the steps of the Jedi Temple, their gaze locked on the war-torn sky. Smoke choked the heavens, flames licked the skylines of Coruscant. And then they saw it, Kenobi's ship, a helpless burning wreck, plummeting to the surface. Mace caught his breath. Where was Anakin? They had sent him to rescue the Chancellor. Had they failed? Had they been too late? But before he could voice his fears, the Force screamed. A tremor unlike anything he had ever felt before tore through the galaxy itself. A seismic rupture in the very fabric of the galaxy. It was overwhelming. Something was colossally wrong. Then Yoda moved. Without hesitation, the Grand Master thrusted out his hand and was suddenly launched forwards, hurtled thousands of yards away from the temple by an earth-shattering force push. The air was ripped from his lungs as he soared through the cityscape, confused, disoriented, and horrified. The sky ignited. Mace barely had time to witness the nightmare unfolding before his eyes. The Jedi Temple was vaporized in the matter of seconds. Gone. Venator-class Star Destroyers loomed in the skies like executioners, their cannons glowing, their order absolute. A devastating orbital bombardment rained down on the temple, turning millenniums of history, knowledge, and life into nothing but flaming ruins of the temple. After all fire had ceased, nothing remained, or at least the bare foundations. The Jedi Order had been annihilated in mere seconds. And through all the chaos, Anakin fell, hurtling himself from the flaming wreckage of his ship. He barely managed to hurl himself onto a nearby building, his body crashing against the durasteel roof. His lungs burned, his vision blurred. But the moment he got to his feet, the explosion hit him. A monstrous shockwave of fire and wind slammed into him, nearly sending him off the edge. His ears rang, his body ached. But none of it mattered, because when he lifted his head, the Jedi Temple was gone. Its spirals crumbling in a brilliant inferno, engulfed in the white-hot light. The very heart of the Jedi Order reduced to rubble. Their home, their sanctuary, had been obliterated. Anakin's breath hitched. He had no more tears left to shed. He simply fell to his knees and sat there for what felt like an eternity. Above him, the massacre continued. The Jedi starfighters, scrambling, desperate, unaware of their doom, were easily cut down one by one. Venators turned on their former allies, their guns blazing with cold efficiency. None of them stood a chance. There was no warning, no time, but the betrayal was absolute. The purge was merciless. As the Jedi burned, the Republic fell silent. Its fate had already been sealed. From the balcony of the Invisible Hand, Palpatine watched. The battle raged. Fire and destruction painted the void of space in streaks of crimson and gold. Too soon, he thought. This was all happening too soon. He needed more time, more control. Anakin was supposed to be his apprentice, his weapon. But now that hope was slipping through his fingers like grains of sand. His lips curled into a snarl. No matter. If Anakin could not be turned, then new plans had to be made. Slowly, he turned his attention back to the crumbled form of Dooku. The once mighty Sith Lord lay unconscious, his body broken, his fate sealed. Palpatine's fingers twitched. A tendril of darkness slithered from his mind. A mind shard, sharp as a dagger, burrowed into Dooku's skull. Agonizing pain. Dooku's eyes snapped open, and a blood-curdling scream tore from his throat. His body convulsed, as invisible razors shredded through his mind. But his screams were suddenly cut short. The Force gripped him. He was lifted from the cold floor, his limbs dangling, his throat tightening. Palpatine pulled him closer, so close he could feel the sickly warmth of his breath against his ear. "You will suffer for your betrayal, my apprentice," he hissed. Dooku gasped, his vision swimming as the truth sank in. He had been discarded, used. There would be no mercy this time. Palpatine's lips curled into something that was no longer a smile. Dooku asked if this would mean he was to die. "Death?" he whispered, his voice thick with amusement. "No, Count Dooku. That would be too kind." A deep, gurgled chuckle rumbled through the Sith Lord's throat, a sound so unnatural it sent a fresh wave of terror down Dooku's spine. Then pain, unrelenting, searing, all-consuming pain. Lightning tore through him, not to kill, but to break. His body spasmed violently, nearly every nerve ablaze. His mind drowning in darkness. He could not even scream. His unconscious body collapsed against the cold floor. The Sith Lord didn't even spare him another glance. He had already ceased the matter. Slowly, his gaze drifted across the room, towards the lifeless corpse of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Such a waste. He had been so powerful, so much potential, so much strength wasted on the Jedi's foolish ideologies. Had things gone differently, Kenobi could have been a formidable Darksider. Palpatine turned away, then hesitated. A slow, insidious thought slithered through his mind. Or could he still be? A wicked, unnatural smile crept on his face. The dark side is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. Mace Windu shot to his feet. His voice screamed no. The Jedi Temple was gone, a pillar of smoke and fire, reduced to nothing in seconds. The place that has stood for thousands of years, the very heart of the Jedi Order, had been vaporized before. His pulse thundered in his ears, his grip tightening around his lightsaber hilt. What the hell just happened? Why had the clones, their soldiers, their allies, turned against them? Why had they massacred the Jedi? Mace reached into the Force, desperate for answers, but all he found was death. Across the galaxy, the light of thousands of Jedi flickered and died, snuffed out in an instant. The Force itself screamed in agony, drowned beneath the suffocating weight of darkness. And yet, one still remained that he could sense. Anakin. Mace's eyes narrowed. He was alive, but something was wrong. His muscles tensed. He needed to move. He turned to leave, only to be cut off. From every direction, a legion of clone troopers stormed in, their rifles snapping up. Blaster fire erupted in a deadly storm of red energy. Traitors. Mace moved before the first bolt could even graze him. He sprang upwards, twisting in the air as his blade ignited in a flash of violet light. He deflected, redirected, and destroyed everything he could, but there was too many of them. As he landed on the higher ground, a new threat descended from above. AAT gunships. Engines howling, the craft hovered into position. Their heavy turrets locked onto him. A heartbeat later, fire. Turbolaser blast rained down, scorching the ground where he had once stood. He ran and dodged, weaving throughout the city, but they persisted. One shot landed at the heels of his feet, sending him crashing down into the lower levels. But as they searched more, Mace was already gone. Too fast, his Force-enhanced speed made him a blur, dodging between the deadly volleys, his lightsaber a streak of purple fire as he deflected what he could. The cityscape blurred around him, the world reduced to flashing lights and deafening explosions. Only three things flashed in his mind: escape, regroup, find Anakin. Mace's mind was a razor-sharp blade, his focus unbreakable. He leaped from the high ground straight into the chaos below. The crowded streets were packed with panicked civilians, desperate to flee the unfolding nightmare. Mace landed hard, immediately vanishing into the stampede. Above, the clones began to sweep the crowd, their visors scanning for the Jedi Master, but they wouldn't find him. He was already gone, and he had one mission left: to find the only other Jedi who might still be alive. Sidious strode into the command center of the Invisible Hand, his dark robes billowing behind him like a living shadow. General Grievous, freshly returned from the hangar bay, snarled at the intruder, his skeletal fingers tightening around his lightsabers. Another Jedi? The cyborg lunged, igniting his blades in a flash of green and blue. He never stood a chance. Before his attack could land, an unseen force slammed into him like a wrecking ball, hurling him across the chamber. He crashed to the floor with a thunderous clank, his mechanical limbs sparking from the impact. Sidious took a slow, deliberate step forward, his glowing eyes beneath the hood. His voice, cold, echoed through the room. "I am no Jedi." Grievous hesitated, then lowered his weapon, rising shakily to his feet. The cyborg turned to follow Sidious's gaze. He remembered who he was. The war-torn world stretched before them, its skies thick with smoke, its cities reduced to ash. This was not how the Clone Wars was meant to end. This was chaos. And yet, Sidious smiled. It no longer mattered. The pieces had fallen into place. Another plan, a far greater one, had taken root. Turning to Grievous, his voice a whisper of pure malice, he gave a single, final order: end the Clone Wars. The Republic must die. Grievous let out a deep laugh, his burning eyes flickering with malice glee. Raising his wrist communicator, he activated a secret frequency, one that had been waiting for this exact moment. Across the galaxy, hidden Separatist fleets, one that had remained silent for years, lurched to life. From the cold void of deep space, armadas of warships emerged from the shadows, cutting through hyperspace with terrifying precision. In an instant, the Republic's strongholds fell. On countless worlds, trillions of battle droids awoke. The Jedi were gone. The clone armies, leaderless and overwhelmed, were slaughtered. Across the Republic's once proud domain, planet after planet fell beneath the unstoppable march of the Separatist war machine. And as the galaxy burned, Sidious turned away, his cloak swirling around him as he descended into the depths of Coruscant. The Senate awaited him. It was now time for the next phase of his grand design. Coruscant burned. Word of the Jedi Temple's destruction had spread like wildfire. The people, many of whom who had once feared the Jedi, now mourned them. They had seen their heroism during the Battle of Coruscant and throughout the rest of the Clone Wars. They've witnessed their selfless sacrifices firsthand, but now they were gone. The Senate chamber buzzed with fury. Voices clashed, accusations flew, outrage rippled through the air like a storm waiting to break. But the moment the centerpiece of the Senate rose, the room was swallowed by silence. Sidious entered. His robes flowed like a liquid shadow as he stepped forward towards the center podium. His voice twisted in a deep, sorrowful frown. His presence alone sent cold shivers throughout the assembly. He raised a single hand. "Senators of the Republic," he began, his voice a quiet thunder that rumbled through the chamber. "It is with a heavy heart that I stand before you on this dark day." The silence thickened. "The Jedi, the trusted guardians of our Republic," he exhaled, shaking his head, his golden eyes blistering with false grief. "They have betrayed us." A murmur swept throughout the crowd. For years they have orchestrated the Clone Wars from the shadows, manipulating us, pulling the strings of both the Republic and Separatists. They have played all of us for fools, leading us into war to consolidate their own power. The murmurs turned to gasps, but their treachery had been exposed. Sidious continued. And with great effort, I have brokered peace with the Confederacy of Independent Systems. A hollowed silence. Then, behind Sidious, a person emerged. Not just any person, but a menacing figure. General Grievous stepped forward. The Senate erupted. Shouts of outrage, horror, and disbelief flooded the chambers as the towering cyborg approached, his mechanical feet clanking against the polished floors. The butcherer of the Republic, standing in the heart of Coruscant. Grievous only grinned beneath his mask. His burning eyes scanned the terrified crowd. Sidious lifted his hand once more. Order. We shall have order. The room fell silent. The war is over, Sidious declared. The Republic and the Confederacy will merge into one. A new government will be formed. He turned his face, twisting into something dark, something triumphant. An empire. The room exploded in a fury of desperate voices. Furious protests filled the air as senators rose from their seats, demanding answers, all screaming in defiance. Then, Palpatine's voice cut through them all, sharp as a blade. Enough! The Senate froze. His voice, though barely above a whisper, carried the weight of doom. This new order will bring stability, power, and dominance unmatched in all of history. His lips curled into something dangerous. But before we can achieve peace, we must eliminate those who seek to tear it apart. The true architects of war. The chamber was still deathly silent. Palpatine's eyes gleamed. The Jedi. A single pulse of horror spread throughout the entire room. The tension was suffocating. Effective immediately, he continued. The Jedi Order is to be hunted down and defeated. Any who harbors them, anyone who shows them mercy, will share their fate. A moment of silence, then a voice of defiance. This is madness. All eyes turned to Senator Chuchi. She rose from her seat, shaking with fury. The Jedi protected us. They gave their lives for this republic. And now you wish... She never got to finish. Grievous moved in a blur. Before the senator could react, the cyborg launched himself across the chamber, his metal claws wrapping around her throat like an iron vice. Gasps, screams, horror. Grievous lifted her high on her senator pod, his mechanical talons tightening as she kicked and choked for air. He turned, scanning the faces of the terrified senators. Then he laughed, a deep, bone-chilling laugh. This is no longer a republic, he growled. Disobedience will not be tolerated. You, Senator, will not be tolerated. And with that, he let her go. The senator's scream echoed throughout the chamber as she plummeted. The sound of her body hitting the floor below was like a gunshot. Silence. They had all witnessed a murder. Then screams erupted from the crowd, but Grievous was already moving. In an instant, his claw shot forward again, this time wrapping around the throat of Bail Organa. The senator struggled, gasping, eyes bulging. Enough! Palpatine's voice boomed through the Senate, like a voice of a god. Everyone fell still. Grievous sneered, but slowly loosened his grip, allowing Bail to collapse back onto his seat, gasping for air. Palpatine surveyed the room, the flickering lights casting shadows across his monstrous features. Let this be a warning, he said smoothly. The Empire does not tolerate weakness. The Empire does not tolerate defiance. The senators, one by one, lowered themselves onto their seats. Fear had won. Sidious smiled. He raised his arms, his voice ringing out one final time. The Republic has failed, but the Empire will succeed where all else has fallen. And as the Senate chamber sat paralyzed, trembling silence, the galaxy shifted. The age of the Jedi was over. The age of darkness had begun. Mace Windu's hands trembled. The holopad slipped from his grip, clattering to the floor. His breath came in ragged gasps as he stared at the broadcast. His mind struggled to process the nightmare unfolding before him. Chancellor Palpatine had betrayed them, not just the Jedi, but the entire Republic. Mace had always been wary of the Chancellor, suspicious of his increasing power. But this was beyond treachery. The galaxy had turned upside down. The Jedi were being hunted, murdered, and now the man who orchestrated the Clone Wars was now the Emperor. He had no time to grieve. He had to find Anakin. Closing his eyes, Mace reached out through the Force, only to be slammed by a wave of darkness, pain, and death. The temple was gone. The Jedi were dying all across the galaxy. Their presence, once bright like stars, were fading away, one by one. But then, amidst the void of swirling despair, a presence. Anakin. Mace's eyes snapped open. Without hesitation, he ran, and he eventually found him sitting alone. Anakin Skywalker, the hero with no fear, reduced to a shadow of himself. His hands rested limply on his knees, his shoulders hunched, his face pale and hollow. His lightsaber lay at his feet, untouched. The young man didn't look up. Mace stepped closer. Anakin, listen to me. The Jedi... He was cut off. He killed Obi-Wan. Mace froze. His stomach lurched. He staggered back a step, blinking, struggling to breathe. Obi-Wan? He knew something bad had happened. But Obi-Wan dead? But what Anakin said next shattered Mace's whole world. Anakin's voice was eerily calm, devoid of emotion. His gaze remained fixed ahead. Palpatine did this. He tricked us all. He had been playing us since the beginning. Mace's pulse pounded in his ears. He could barely think, barely comprehending what he was hearing. The mastermind behind everything was Palpatine. His throat tightened as a horrifying realization crashed down on him. It was always Palpatine. Now, it was too late. Mace gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stand firm. Then we have no choice. We are the last of the Jedi. We must destroy this monster. Anakin finally looked at him. His tear-streaked face nearly broke Mace's resolve. But there was no time to grieve. He reached down, pulling Anakin up. I have a ship. We leave now. Anakin didn't move. No. Mace narrowed his eyes. What? He said. Anakin swallowed hard. There is someone I need to see first. Padme Amidala sat alone in her office, her hands shaking. The Senate was in chaos. She had just witnessed one of her closest friends, Senator Chuchi, thrown to her death by General Grievous. Her screams still ringing in her ears. The Republic was gone. The Jedi were branded as traitors, and now an empire had taken its place. Tears burned in her eyes. This wasn't supposed to happen. Her hand instinctively went to her stomach. Gripping the fabrics of her dress, she was afraid. Not just for herself, but for her children. A noise outside caught her attention. She stood and walked to the window, just in time to witness another massacre. A protest had broken out in the lower levels of the Senate district. Citizens, brave, defiant, standing against the tyranny unfolding before them, demanding that Palpatine be removed from office and for the Republic to be restored. But their cries were cut short as battle droids soon surrounded them and blaster fire erupted. Padme gasped. The protesters barely had time to scream before they were all cut down where they stood. Thousands of bodies collapsed to the ground. The streets ran red as the blood of the dead poured out. She felt her stomach turn. This is what the Republic had become. A tyrannical empire. She staggered back, gripping the wall for support. She had to leave. She barely made it out of the Senate building before security patrols started closing in. By the time she reached her apartment, her hands were shaking. But something was wrong. Her door was unlocked. She hesitated, slowly, carefully pushing it open. Looking across the room, a ship was parked on the balcony, but it wasn't Anakin's. It was Obi-Wan's starfighter. Her heart stopped. What was he doing here? Where was Anakin? Then she saw him. Anakin sitting on their couch, his head buried in his hands. The moment he saw her, he shot to his feet. He ran over to her, instinctively pulling her into a desperate hug. Padme broke. Tears poured from the both of them as they clung to each other desperately, shaking. Anakin held on to her like he was afraid she was going to disappear. But there was no time. "We have to leave," Anakin said, his voice urgent. But Padme pulled back, searching his face. "I can't." Anakin blinked. Confused, he asked why. "The people need me." Her voice trembled, but her resolve did not. "If I leave now, it will only give the Emperor more power. I can fight back. I can help from the inside." Anakin shook his head. "No, it's not safe, Padme. None of this is safe." She grabbed his hands. "I can give you information, Anakin. I can help you. It's better for our children if I stay." Silence. Anakin's entire body tensed. Padme saw the shift in his eyes, the way they widened in stunned realization. What?" She bit her lip. He took a step back, his breath hitching. "You mean, a father." He had always known something was changing within her. He had felt it through the Force, but to hear it spoken aloud, a smile broke through the pain. A small, broken laugh, but the joy was short-lived. The galaxy had changed, and their children would be born into a world of evil, suffering from tyranny. Anakin clenched his fists in rage. "I won't let them grow up in this galaxy." Padme placed a hand on his cheek, her thumb brushing away a stray tear. "Then fight for them. Survive for them." He swallowed hard, nodding, understanding that they would be safer with Padme, as she wasn't currently being hunted by the Empire. "Mace and I are leaving. We're going to an ancient Jedi refuge," Anakin told Padme. They embraced one last time, holding on as if they never wanted to let go. Then Anakin left, and as the doors closed behind him, Padme placed a protective hand on her stomach and whispered, "May the Force be with you." The Naboo starfighter plunged into the vastness of space, its engines humming with power as it hurtled to the unknown. Anakin's knuckles were white as he gripped the controls. They had to escape. Ahch-To, the ancient Jedi sanctuary, was their last hope. But the secrecy of their journey was shattered in an instant. Alarms screamed. A dozen ARC-170s shot from the atmosphere, their weapons blazing. The ship shuddered violently. A shot tearing into one of its engines, another puncturing the power systems. The lights flickered. "We got company," Anakin growled, slamming the controls to their left, narrowly avoiding another blast. The ship rocked violently as it plummeted. The rear stabilizers screamed in protest. Anakin was thrown back from the controls, slamming into the rear of the cockpit. Mace, already on his feet, reached over to steady him. "We're not going down without a fight," Mace said, his voice steady despite the chaos. The ship lurched again, and both Jedi felt it. A dark presence, pulling at the Force like a black hole. They turned to each other in a silent understanding. Grievous was coming. Suddenly, the boarding clamps clicked. The doors buckled as the hiss of oxygen escaping filled the air. Mace and Anakin ignited their lightsabers in unison, blue and purple blades casting eerie shadows in the flickering lights. The two Jedi were ready. Then the doors exploded off their hinges. Blaster fire rained down, filling the corridors with a deadly hum. The Jedi moved as one, a blur of speed and precision. Mace deflected the oncoming shots, his body flowing easily with the Force. Anakin was moving quick, despite his injuries. While it pained him, he cut down the clones in an instant. But then, something was wrong. This was too easy. Sure, there were dozens of clones, but he had expected more. The last clone stood alone, firing. But then he fell to the ground, screamed as he was yanked off the floor by an unseen force. Mace and Anakin barely had time to react before the soldier was flung violently at them. They dove out of the way as the body slammed into the walls. The noise was deafening, and the two Jedi turned to face what they knew was coming all along: General Grievous. He stepped forward, his metallical body clanking with every movement, laughing maniacally as he walked over the bodies of the fallen clones. His forearms flexed as he drew two of his lightsabers, the green blades flickering to life with a sizzle. "Jedi," he rasped, his voice oozing malice. "Come, fight me." Anakin gritted his teeth, his heart pounding. He surged forward with a battle cry, his saber flashing in a deadly arc aimed at Grievous's torso. But Grievous had been waiting. With a terrifying speed, the cyborg parried Anakin's strike, pushing him back with brute strength. Anakin swung again, but Grievous countered with a slash of his own that sent Anakin stumbling back. Mace stepped in, his purple blade flashing, aimed at Grievous's exposed flank. But the cyborg anticipated it as he swung his remaining sabers, parrying Mace's blow with ease. His forearms moved in a blur. The fight was turning brutal. Mace ducked under a savage swipe and twisted into an attack of his own. Grievous backpedaled, but not fast enough. Mace's blade cut through one of his mechanical arms, and the hand flew off with a loud clank. Grievous howled in a fury, but before he could retaliate, he swung a piece of debris, a large metal panel from the wreckage of a ship, at Mace. With deadly speed, Mace sidestepped, but the force of the impact sent him reeling. Anakin took advantage of the opening, charging with a wild, powerful strike. But Grievous dropped low, sweeping Anakin's legs from beneath him. Anakin crashed to the floor, grunting in pain. "Pathetic," Grievous mocked, raising both of his remaining sabers in preparation for a killing blow. But Mace was already back on his feet. He charged with a roar, attacking Grievous head-on, mixing forms in a fury of unpredictable attacks. Form 7, aggressive and relentless. Forms 4, flowing and fast. In Form 5, focused and overpowering. Grievous could barely keep up, his body blocking most of Mace's strikes, but not all. Mace sliced through Grievous's armor, narrowly missing the cyborg's torso as the enemy stepped back. Grievous laughed. "You think you can defeat me, Jedi?" He sneered, but Mace's eyes were locked on him with intensity of a predator. Grievous reached down and ripped off a chunk of the ship's hull and flung it at Mace, who barely managed to deflect it. As the piece of metal smashed into the wall, Grievous lashed out, seizing Mace by the throat. With a vicious swing, he slammed Mace into the wall. Mace gasped for breath, but Grievous didn't stop. The cyborg's eyes glinted with hatred as he raised his other arms, ready to crush him. But Anakin wasn't finished. He leaped up, using the Force to propel himself forward, and brought his lightsaber down with a savage slash. Grievous could barely avoid it, twisting towards Anakin. The two Jedi fought side by side, attacking from different angles. Grievous's attacks became more erratic, his defensive style slipping as the Jedi pressed their attack. Then, in a split second, Mace seized the moment, and then, with a swift, calculated strike, he disarmed Grievous, sending one of his remaining lightsabers flying across the room. Grievous staggered, unbalanced, and Mace pushed forward, driving him back. But before he could finish him off, a blinding flash of red. Sidious. His lightsaber cleaved through the air as Mace was sent flying back. As the lightsaber flew back to its master's hand, the Sith Lord appeared at the last moment, the force of darkness that seemed to crush the air around them. His yellow eyes gleamed as he stepped into the fray, raising his lightsaber in a slow, deliberate motion. Anakin and Mace both raised their blades in unison, but Sidious was too fast. He struck first, a blur of light as his sabers clashed against Mace's, sending him back. The Sith's lightning-fast attacks sent Mace stumbling. Then Grievous was back on his feet. The two monsters, side by side, overwhelmed the Jedi. Grievous attacked Anakin with a fury of blades, while Sidious pressed Mace harder and harder, using the Force to push him back. Mace tried to hold his ground, but the Sith was too much. His lightsaber barely blocked a savage blow from Sidious, and before he could react, lightning poured from the Sith's fingertips. Mace screamed in agony as bolts seared his skin, literally searing the skin off of him. Anakin watched in horror as one of the Order's strongest Jedi was reduced to nothing more than a barely clinging onto life husk under the Sith's onslaught. "No," Anakin cried, desperately pushing through Grievous's strikes, but his movements were sluggish and easily countered by the cyborg. Mace, barely conscious, managed to reach out with the Force. "Run, Anakin. You're our only hope." Anakin froze. "Run." With a howl of defiance, Anakin summoned all of his remaining strength to throw Grievous back, but it was too late. Mace was gone. Not dead, but much worse. Anakin's heart shattered. With tears in his eyes, he escaped into the Emperor's shuttle, sending the ship into hyperspace mere milliseconds before enemy reinforcements could arrive. As he sat back, he fell, collapsing from exhaustion, his body crushed by the weight of his failure. It was all too much. The last thing he saw before the darkness consumed him was the distant hue of a green planet, but not the one he intended. Dooku's eyes flickered open, struggling to adjust to the oppressive darkness that surrounded him. His head throbbed. A dull ache gnawed at him. As he slowly became aware of his surroundings, something was wrong. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of rot and decay. It was nauseating. The stench of death, so potent it burned his nostrils, clogging his senses. He recoiled instinctively, his stomach churning. He blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fog in his mind, but when his eyes finally focused, what he saw made his blood run cold. Before him, sprawled grotesquely on the cold stone floor, laid the mangled corpse of the body of Jedi Master Yoda. His tiny green form was barely recognizable, burnt beyond recognition. The skin blackened and torn as if scorched by something far more brutal than mere fire. His eyes, once wise and full of life, were hollow and lifeless. Yoda was no more. The sharpness of death lingered in the air, clinging to the air like a bitter, unshakable fog. Dooku's throat tightened. He wanted to scream. He wanted to deny it, to look away, to tell him that this wasn't real, but he couldn't. His eyes burned with the horror of the sight. He had been at war with Yoda, yes, but this was unimaginable. Even now, as he stared at the mangled corpse, a knot of guilt twisted deep in his chest. This was beyond anything he had ever anticipated. The faint clicking echoed throughout the room, too calm, too deliberate. Dooku's breath hitched. He looked up, heart pounding in his chest. From the shadows emerged Sidious, his face a twisted mark of cruelty and power, his yellow eyes glinting in the dark like a predator closing in on its prey. He stepped forward. Slowly, a sickening smile creeped across his lips. "Ah, Count." Sidious's voice was low, almost silky, but dripped in venom. "A shame, truly. Only now, at the end of the war, at the end of her reign, do you truly see how little you had, how little you control." The words hit Dooku harder than any strike could. Not even your own general serves you anymore. The Sith Lord gestured lazily behind him. Grievous entered the room, his mechanical body clanking unnervingly as he approached. The cyborg's mechanical eyes shifted in disgust as he glanced at Dooku, as if he was nothing more than a piece of filth. Palpatine continued, the sinister words sliding off his tongue like poison. "You knew the price of betrayal, Count. You knew there would be consequences. Yet you thought you could change the galaxy." The words were too much to bear. Dooku's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't what he had envisioned. This wasn't the future he had fought for. The galaxy burned, torn apart by lies and deception. He thought there was still a chance, something he could do. But now, with the sight of Yoda's broken body, the weight of it all came crashing down. The Jedi were dead. The Republic and CIS were obliterated, consumed by the very thing they had tried to defeat. A gasp escaped Dooku's lips, a feeble, hollow sound that barely echoed in the room. This wasn't supposed to happen. It was too late now, though. Too late for redemption, too late to fix the shattered pieces. In his shame, Dooku lowered his head. The weight of his mistakes pressed down on him like a suffocating force. His own choices led him here. Palpatine spat. He turned away from the broken Dooku. The Sith Lord's footsteps echoed in the empty room, leaving Dooku to wallow in the consequences of his own hubris. The light of hope, if there had ever been one, was now gone. The walls seemingly closed in around him. As the weight of the galaxy's destruction pressed down harder, the horror of it all crystallizing into one single, undeniable truth. He was nothing now. And in that final, crushing moment, Dooku was alone, abandoned in the ruins of his own making. Anakin shot awake with a sharp gasp, his body seizing for a moment before his eyes darted from side to side, trying to make sense of his surrounding. He wasn't on a ship anymore. He wasn't in space. No, this place was entirely different. An open, rustic structure, the walls made of natural wood, vines creeping up in its length. His gaze landed on the ceiling, where he saw the faint outlines of leaves swaying from the outside of a small window, filtering the sunlight into a room. A treehouse medical facility. The unfamiliar sounds of soft murmurs reached his ears. He turned his head to see the Wookiee chieftain, Tarful, standing beside him, a protective air surrounding him as he glanced at Anakin with a deep sense of understanding. But what caught Anakin off guard was the other figure sitting next to him. It was a face he thought he would never see again. A smile tugged at the corner of his lips as he recognized Quinlan Vos, the rogue Jedi who had always been one step ahead of the galaxy's ever-changing tides. The moment their eyes met, Quinlan's lips turned into a smirk, almost as if he had been waiting here for Anakin to snap out of his confusion. "Took you long enough," Quinlan said, his voice a mix of playful reproach and relief. He helped Anakin sit up, a gentle touch of his hand supporting him. Anakin tried to move, but his legs refused to cooperate, and he winced in frustration. He looked down and saw that his body was wrapped in bandages connected to some sort of machine, a medical apparatus designed to help him recover. His mind raced, trying to piece together what had happened. What was going on? How long had he been out? Quinlan seemed to have read his thoughts, and with a sigh, he answered the questions without even being asked. "The Wookiees saved you," he explained, "like they saved me, brought you here. They didn't agree with Order 66. They don't support what the Empire had done." Anakin's mind was in a haze. The Empire, Order 66, the Purge. He barely remembered the events, but the consequences, the immense loss, were starting to hit him. The realization sank in. He was far from where the Empire could find him. He had been saved, but how long had he been unconscious? He wasn't sure if it had been days or weeks, but one thing was clear: he was alive. A few days would pass before he could stand on his own, and when he finally could, he made his way outside for the first time, the warm light of the sun cascading on his skin. He squinted, taking in the warmth, feeling something almost familiar, like a soft reminder of what life was before everything went wrong. Quinlan stood by his side as they walked through the thick jungle surroundings of the Wookiee enclave. The thick canopy above seemed to hide them from the Empire's watchful eyes, and the air was full of a scent of greenery and life, so different from the sterile, cold feeling of Coruscant. "Once the Empire enacted the Purge," Quinlan began, his voice quiet but firm, "many Jedi fell. I wasn't the only one who managed to escape." He paused, glancing sideways at Anakin. "There is another survivor. I found him shortly after the Wookiees took me in." Anakin's heart skipped a beat. Another Jedi? And then he turned his head as a roar of excitement cut through the air before he could say anything. And within moments, a large furry beast barreled towards him. Gungi, the Wookiee Jedi, massive in stature, but with a grin wide enough to rival a moon, suddenly embraced him, lifting him off his feet. While Anakin's Shriwook was a little rusty, he could still make out what the enthusiastic Jedi was saying. "I knew it," Gungi laughed, his voice booming through the trees. "I knew you were alive, my friend." Anakin chuckled. as he embraced the Wookiee. He hadn't expected this reunion, but it filled him with a sense of warmth he hasn't felt in a long time. A smile crept across his face as he looked at Quinlan. "So what's next for us?" Quinlan shrugged casually, though the seriousness was in his eyes. "I was thinking we stay low for now. We can help form something from the shadows, keep watch, stay out of the Empire's eyes, but..." He looked at Anakin, his gaze piercing through the clutter of his thoughts. "I know you, Anakin. You're not one to hide for long." Anakin looked around at the hidden sanctuary nestled deep within the heart of the jungle. This place was a perfect refuge. Remote and secluded, the Empire would never think to look here. But as his eyes wandered, a thought began to form, one that both terrified and inspired him. With most of the Jedi gone, scattered or destroyed, it was up to those who remained to rebuild the Jedi Order, to start fresh, to create something stronger than before. They had a chance, a fleeting one, but a chance nonetheless. Turning away from the balcony where he had been lost in thought, Anakin was struck with a sudden realization. Mace was captured. He opened his mouth to speak, but Quinlan raised a hand, gesturing for silence. "I know," Quinlan said, almost as if reading his mind once more. "It's all over the holonet. General Grievous took down a group of Jedi, 10 he says. But we know the truth. It was just you and Mace. Grievous may be strong, but to take on 2 of the strongest Jedi with the help of 8 others, it does not add up." Anakin frowned, the weight of it sinking in. "So what happened on Coruscant? How did we lose?" Quinlan's face darkened. "I don't know. There are too many questions, and there's one name we both know well enough. Sidious. He orchestrated it all. He's the one that did this to us. He killed Obi-Wan. He destroyed the Jedi, and he is the reason Mace is gone." Quinlan's face darkened with the realization. Palpatine had betrayed them all. A long silence hung in the air between them before Quinlan's voice broke through, filling with grim determination. "Well, I guess we have to save them all now, don't we?" He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I don't know about you, but this seems like a pretty nice place to start." Anakin looked over the balcony once more, his gaze filled with resolve. A sense of purpose began to swell in his chest. The Jedi would rebuild. The Empire would fall. He could feel it, deep within him. He wasn't alone. And with that thought, the journey towards redemption, towards rebuilding the Jedi Order, had truly begun. Running down the cold, narrow halls of the Mandalorian royal palace, her breath came in short rasps, echoing off the stone walls. Her face was streaked with dirt, soot, and tears, the grime from a battle clinging to her skin. The pain in her arm was unbearable, but it was nothing compared to the shock that had already gripped her heart. She clenched her bleeding wound as she staggered, each step heavier than the last. They had been so close. She had tracked Maul here, convinced that this would be the final confrontation. But everything shattered in an instant. Before she could even strike, the clones turned on her, their blasters opening fire. She had barely managed to escape, but the cost was too high. Maul, he was lost to her now, too consumed by his own rage to survive the chaos. She had heard him fall, could feel his presence shattering through the Force, like 1,000 shattered fragments of glass. But she didn't see it happen. She didn't see his body fall. But she knew it was over. Ahsoka had been forced to kill her own men, friends, her allies. Her heart felt heavy with their deaths, the weight of each blow that she had struck. The clones had attacked her without hesitation, and in the madness, she had fought for survival, and they had taken their toll on her, leaving her bleeding, bruised, and hunted. Her breaths were shallowed, sharp against the silence that had fallen over the palace. She slumped in a corner, her body collapsing against the cold stone, desperate for a moment of rest. But there was no time. There was no escape, at least, not yet. Her fingers trembled as she fumbled for the comlink, the device slipping from her grasp before she could fully grasp it. And when she held it in her hand, her thumb hovered over the button, trembling with uncertainty. She could barely remember the last time she had spoken to Bo-Katan. The last time she saw her, Bo-Katan had been standing strong, covering Ahsoka's escape, her face grim but determined. As she was surrounded by the advancing clones, she closed her eyes, the fear of losing another ally rising. With shaking hands, she called out, her voice almost a whisper in the cold emptiness. Bo-Katan, Bo-Katan, please answer me. The seconds stretched on, then minutes. She could hear a faint hum of the palace around her, but her voice seemed to vanish into the walls. The silence was unbearable. She stared at the comlink, willing it to respond. Then, finally, she changed it to a secret frequency that very few had operation of, and only moments later, it crackled. A distant voice answered her. The relief washed over her was instant, but the recognition of the voice made her stomach drop. The voice on the other end wasn't Bo-Katan. Her voice fell as she realized who it was. Slowly, Mace Windu's eyes fluttered open, a groan of pain escaping his lips as a sharp, agonizing sensation coursed through his body. His muscles screamed, heavy and unresponsive, as though he had been slammed into the ground 1,000 times. His head swarmed with confusion and panic. He instinctively tried to pull his arms to him, but his limbs wouldn't obey. His arms and legs were bound, cruelly shackled to the cold, unforgiving stone wall behind him. Panic clawed at his chest, but his breaths were shallow and quick, struggling to clear the fog from his mind. The air was thick with something rancid, a foul, suffocating stench that turned his stomach. His gaze shifted. Through the world around him seemed to blur and disorient. He could barely make out a dark, ominous shape on the floor. His eyes strained harder, trying to focus on the lifeless form that lay motionless. It lay so still it could have been a statue, but the robes were unmistakable. Tan, frayed at the edges, a beard. The horror hit him like a crashing wave. No, it couldn't be. He knew who it was. A tear slowly guided down his cheeks. His heart sank into his stomach as he recognized him, the finality of it sinking in with a chilling dread. But before he could even process the enormity of the sight before him, Mace heard the distinct sounds of footsteps, slow, echoing across the cold, damp room. His body tensed, every muscle screaming with the need to fight. But he was trapped, helpless. His gaze snapped to the source of the footsteps, and there, emerging from the shadows like a dark, twisted phantom, was a figure cloaked in black. A figure that was both all too familiar yet horrifying in his presence. Sidious, the Sith's lord, laugh echoed throughout the space, rich and cold, filling every corner of Mace's mind like venom. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, but he could feel the weight of the dark energy gathering around him, pressing down on his chest. Your pathetic leader had fallen. Your pathetic order has fallen, Sidious sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. The age of the Jedi may have passed, but I still have purpose for you and your friend over there. Mace's breath hitched. His heart slammed into his ribs as the Sith Lord pointed to the body, still unmoving. Sidious's words were like a cruel slap across his face, each syllable sharpening the blade of his dread lodged in his gut. Mace's face drained of color, understanding what was unfolding. No, barely able to speak. The horror choking him. You can't. That's impossible. Sidious's laugh grew louder and colder. You Jedi, so blind, he hissed, his voice slithering across Mace's mind. You think you understand the Force? That your narrow view of it is all there is? But you've never seen what it is to truly wield the Force, the power of the dark side. Mace could feel it, the shifting presence, a weight pressing down on his chest, as if the very air around him was thickening with every breath. Sidious's gaze locked onto him with a dark, predatory satisfaction. For the first time, Mace felt true, paralyzing horror. He could sense the dark side coiling around Sidious like a serpent. The power so ancient, so twisted, it made all the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Sidious smiled, his teeth gleaming in the dim light, as he began to chant, low and guttural words that slithered into Mace's mind, each syllable a poisoned needle to his consciousness. The air grew colder, and the shadows in the room seemed to deepen, closing in around him, suffocating him. The dark energy intensified, crackling and seething like a storm about to break. Mace's pulse thundered in his ears, his heart pounding with frantic desperation. He had to stop this. He couldn't let it happen. But his body, chained to the wall, refused to move. The darkness, the power of the Sith, he could feel it building up, growing, surrounding the room. Sidious's chant grew louder, more intense, and with it, Mace's panic intensified. He was trapped, and the Force was out of reach. And as Sidious's chant reached its peak, the body on the ground shifted. Just slightly at first. It was barely noticeable, but it was enough. A cold shiver ran down Mace's spine as a body twitched, then jerked unnaturally. The impossible began to happen. The ritual was working. Sidious's smile widened, madness gleaming in his eyes, as he slowly approached, savoring every moment of Mace's helplessness. "You see, Windu," he said softly, voice dripping with triumph, "the dark side is not just a power. It is freedom. Freedom to bend life and death to your will. Watch as I take what was lost and return it as my own." Mace felt the blood drain from his face, the dread clamping down on him, suffocating him as the impossible unfolded before his very eyes. This was the end. And that was part 1 of What If Dooku Told Anakin That Palpatine Was the Sith. I really hope you enjoyed this darker tale, and while the next part won't be out for maybe a month or so, I assure you that it will be worth the wait, as I plan on taking this story to the next level. And for some of you wondering, yes, part 2, and maybe even 3, depending on how the story goes, will be incredibly dark and more focused on story development and action, but less action-packed than this one most likely. So, if you did enjoy this What If, it would mean a whole lot to me if you could like and subscribe, as not only would it help the channel out a ton, but it would help me make these videos quicker. And also, let me know your predictions of how you think the second part will play out in the comments down below. I would love to hear what you guys would think would happen. And with that, my fellow Star Wars nerds, may the Force be with you.